It's Tuesday, February 8th, and this is now on HNN.
Apparently they either had a gun or something like that.
We've learned a building fire in Pearl City could be connected to a murder.
A growing shift in the fight against the pandemic. More states are pulling back on their mask mandates as daily COVID cases drop.
We are experiencing an awakening, a response to a calling.
A somber ceremony today as Evie Kupuna begin their journey back home from Germany. How those sacred bones ended up in Europe.
Here are the nominees for Best Picture.
These stories plus the nominations are in. An update on the Oscar hopefuls coming up on This Is Now. This just into our newsroom. Governor David Ige has announced that the Safe Travels Hawaii program will remain unchanged at this time, meaning booster shots will not be required for, quote, up-to-date vaccination status for individuals traveling to the state. Our web team is writing up all this information right now, so look for more details on your HNN digital platforms.
And we have more breaking news we want to tell you about. The U.S. Attorney has filed criminal charges against former State Senator Kalani English, accusing the former Senate Majority Leader of accepting bribes from a Hawaii business owner. Now, the charging document says English was caught with $5,000 in cash handed to him by the businessman after English had both introduced and killed legislation which would have benefited the business. Now, the company had technology that would have made it a candidate for government-funded cesspool replacements. The document says English agreed to support specific bills that would have benefited the business owner in exchange for a stream of benefits that included hotel rooms and outright cash. Now, English, who was a member of the cesspool conversion working group, also allegedly received $10,000 from the businessman to kill a bill. He retired from the Senate back in May of last year due to long-term COVID symptoms. There are many more details, and we will have much more on this developing story on air and online. And the U.S. Attorney is holding a press conference at 1:30 this afternoon, and we'll be streaming that live on all your HNN digital platforms.
All right, we got to get to the other developing story of the day. You know, arson investigators are investigating an apartment fire in Pearl City, and it could be linked to a homicide. Our Sammy Selena has the latest on that.
The fourth-story apartment behind me caught fire last night around 9, and after officials put out the flames, they discovered a dead body. Sources say this was a possible homicide, but a police report shows this was classified as an unattended death, and they are investigating this as arson and reckless endangering. Sources also tell us they heard neighbors arguing, and the suspect was last seen leaving the scene with a gun in his hand and drove off in a white SUV.
Well, I heard sirens, and then when I came out of my house, I saw a massive fire coming out of that third-story building up there. And from what a lot of my neighbors are telling me, someone jumped out the window and ran past them, and apparently they either had a gun or something like that.
Witnesses say there was a lot of commotion last night, but luckily firefighters were able to knock down the flames quickly. HFD said they'll be investigating why this fire even happened in the first place. They said the only other unit that was damaged was the one just below it. Sammy Solina for This Is Now.
Now to the pandemic, the state health department is reporting 533 new COVID infections today. The breakdown shows 357 cases on Oahu. The Big Island, Maui, and Kauai are reporting double digits. Kauai County is separately adding another COVID-related fatality, along with 84 new cases.
More states are planning to lift or roll back mask mandates as this latest surge seems to be easing. Yesterday, 4 states, Connecticut, Delaware, New Jersey, and Oregon, announced that they will lift statewide mask requirements in schools within weeks. The White House says while it still recommends universal mask wearing in schools, the decision is really up to the school districts themselves. Now, next week, California plans to end its indoor mask mandate for vaccinated people, but school children will still be required to wear one. New today from Washington, U.S. Senator Mazie Hirono just gave an update to reporters regarding the tensions with Russia. Here's some of what she had to say.
What can you tell us about the status of sanctions legislation that's being discussed behind the scenes?
It's very hard to tell from what I can discern from the press coverage. It is in some ways really difficult to predict what Putin has in mind, except when you amass over 100,000 troops. I don't know how he's supposed to walk that back, because the man is a thug and a huge egomaniac. So I'm not sure how what his thinking is, but the negotiations have got to continue, whatever it's going to take, and that if he takes a step toward aggression in Ukraine, then those sanctions do have to come down hard on him. We can't just say or threaten that there will be sanctions and then not really, have that come to bear. So it's a kind of standoff that makes everyone very nervous. But I think that our side is doing everything we can. And the other critical part of sanctions is that Putin needs to know that NATO will be completely united against him. He seems to think that he can divide and conquer among the NATO allies, and that message has got to be made so clear to him that our NATO allies, especially I would say Germany, is totally together on the need to provide these sanctions.
U.S. Senator Brian Schatz is urging Congress to approve $100 million to start defueling the Navy's Red Hill tanks. There's also a new legal push to get a judge to order a permanent shutdown. Mahealani Richardson has the story.
The citizen group Viola Alliance, along with a handful of other plaintiffs, plan to file the lawsuit in federal court in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, more than $400 million is in the federal spending bill that would go toward the Red Hill crisis, with $100 million of that to cover the cost of draining the tanks.
I think we should shut it down.
U.S. Senator Brian Schatz says the Red Hill tank system can't be safely operated.
I think the arguments in favor of keeping it in place are pretty weak at this point.
A federal spending bill with a $100 million appropriation to drain the system is expected to pass. Schatz says it's not known how much it'll actually cost, but calling it a first step, as Board of Water Supply officials have warned there could be Oahu water restrictions this summer.
Do you think the Red Hill tanks could be drained before the summer?
I don't know the answer to that. What I can tell you is that this bill puts us in a stronger position to move faster than we had previously contemplated, because this was an emergency. We were able to get this in there on the basis that it is that time sensitive.
Meanwhile, the plaintiffs planning the latest lawsuit come from across the state, unified by one thing: clean water.
It's not a Hawaiian issue. Water is the source of humanity. It's from God.
84-year-old Mary Maxine Kahaulelio and 85-year-old Clarence Kuching are known for their Native Hawaiian activism, and they're joining forces with business and community leaders to sue the Navy, hoping a federal judge will order the shutdown of the Red Hill tanks.
The Navy has had so many decades, if not more recently, at least 8 years, to put some kind of plan in place and take actionable, measurable steps to prevent the disaster that happened, and they did nothing.
It's just way too dangerous. It needs to be shut down. It needs to be closed.
The potential lawsuit comes as the Navy and state go head-to-head over the health department's emergency order to drain the tanks, with the Navy saying it's cleaning up the jet fuel and that its tainted water system is not an imminent threat to Oahu's groundwater. Now, the federal spending bill is expected to pass both the House and the Senate and be signed by the president this week. Mahealani Richardson, Hawaii News Now.
A delegation from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is in Europe today on a mission to bring back 58 sets of iwi kupuna.
We are experiencing an awakening, a response to a calling, a reconnection to our kupuna. We are finding our ancestral voices, and we are restoring our ancestral foundation with each kupuna repatriated and return to their eternal slumber.
The Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation says a German naturalist collected 32 of those iwi kupuna sets around the year 1885. They ended up at a Berlin hospital. The foundation says the remains were taken from a beach in Waimanalo and are likely several hundred years old. OHA says it will meet with that group and 3 others in Germany and Austria to take back what it calls stolen iwi, including remains from Kauai, Molokai, Maui, and the Big Island.
Oh, we're getting ready for the Super Bowl here at HNN and KHNL. And what a fun field trip our guys in LA had today as they visited SoFi Stadium. Let's turn it over to them. They just filed this report.
We finally made it. We are in SoFi Stadium.
It's a palace. It really is. $5.5 billion to make this place. Let's walk you through exactly what's going on as they get ready for Super Bowl on Sunday. Just behind our shoulder over here, they're installing the cameras on the goalposts that are in every end zone, so you get that cool angle of the kicks coming in when they kick field goals. Right behind our right shoulders, they're actually still painting the logos onto the field, those special Super Bowl logos. Of course, this field meticulously managed. The end zones have already been painted with the Bengals and Rams logos. As we look further down the stadium, we see an auxiliary box, either luxury seating or media seating, overflow seating. They say that this stadium normally seats about 70,000 people. For special events like this or the Olympics in 2028 can be expanded to about 100,000 people. Just some of the many, many things that are still going on as they get this stadium ready for Sunday.
That's what I think they've said, 3.1 million square feet of
massive
stadium. But if there's anyone that can make something happen very quickly and adjust the way that they have, it would be the NFL. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah, and one of the people we spoke to who you hear from later on this evening on Hawaii News Now talked about the challenge. Normally, the Super Bowl stadium, the host stadium, those guys come in right after the season is done and start getting that place ready. But the Rams played in the NFC Championship game less than 2 weeks ago. They couldn't obviously start putting up Super Bowl banners while that game still had to be played. So the short notice build for the Super Bowl, and there's just so much that needs to be done.
Also, something that they take into account is the fact that they are in LA. It is the LA Rams, but they're also trying to stay impartial. That's a big word for them.
Yeah, for every Rams logo that you see, there's a Bengals logo. For every, right over our shoulder here, Los Angeles Rams, Whose House? Rams House. Right behind us, Cincinnati Bengals, Who Dey. So it's an impartial stadium. We'll see if the crowd ends up being as much Bengals as it is Rams.
That will be interesting. Okay, so we talked to a couple of NFL executives about what went into this, the planning and all the work. We also talked to the man that's in charge of putting this field turf in. He's been part of every Super Bowl for the last 50 years?
Since Super Bowl I.
Oh, since Super Bowl I. Okay, so 56 years.
Yeah.
He had some very interesting recollections about Aloha Stadium and the grounds crew that he worked with there, so that's coming up a little bit later tonight.
Hey, much more from our tour inside SoFi Stadium. The first time we've been inside this gorgeous place. We'll have that for you tonight on Hawaii News Now. From SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, Ian Shearing.
Steve Uhar.
Back to you guys.
Thanks, Steve and Ian. What a great assignment. I can't say it enough. Again, their live reports coming up on later editions of HNN. And don't forget, KHNL is your Super Bowl station. And coming up in just a minute, we're also your Olympic station, and we'll have an update on that as well. But for now, we got to get you updated on the weather. Here's Guy Hoggy.
We're going to lose the trade winds and variable winds will take over the state. So sometime tomorrow in the afternoon, we're going to lose the trade winds and they're going to be light and variable all the way through Friday. And then on Saturday, the trade winds come back. They'll be especially stronger on Sunday, and that's where we'll likely see a few more windward and Mauka showers. Now, with the winds lightening up tomorrow all the way through Friday, there's a good chance for some spotty showers, mainly late in the day, mainly over interior, island interiors, as well as leeward spots. And the rain might even be briefly heavy, but they won't be widespread. Now, we're going to see those trade winds come back on Saturday. They'll be running quite breezy on Sunday. So things are looking good for the next several days.
All right, let's get you an Olympic update ahead of fresh coverage that gets underway at 3 p.m. on KHNL.
Let's take a look at the medal count. The Russian Olympic Committee still in the lead with 10 overall medals.
The U.S. is trailing behind with 5 total, no gold yet. Sweden actually has the most gold medals so far, with 4. And let's get to those biggest headlines coming out of the games. U.S. figure skater Nathan Chen set a new world record in the short program, giving him a comfortable lead in his quest for gold. Chinese skiing sensation Eileen Gu won gold in the women's free ski big air competition, but the U.S.-born athlete is facing questions over her citizenship. And at least 393 Olympics-related personnel have tested positive for COVID-19 since the strict closed-loop system began on January 23rd.
Cross-country skiing has never been in Team USA's Olympic wheelhouse, but we do have a Nordic superstar. 30-year-old Jessie Diggins just won a bronze medal in Beijing. Jamie Yukas has more.
If they gave out gold medals for unbridled enthusiasm, Jessie Diggins would have a boatload. Whether hiking or biking, in the kitchen or in the gym, she's a social media celebrity.
Surprise! What does click in your head for you to be able to just push at the very last second?
I don't like having regrets. I hate the what if game. And so when I cross that finish line, and usually I'm laying in the snow, like half conscious, trying to breathe. But that's when I take a second to look back on the race. And there's always things for every race that you can improve. But for me, I like crossing that finish line knowing that there was not one drop of energy that I held back.
After that stirring win, her teammates picked her as a flag bearer for the closing ceremonies. A star was born. It was a storybook start. Before she could walk, her parents toted her across the Minnesota landscape. Diggins dominated Minnesota's high school ski clubs, a multi-state champion with a relentless drive for perfection. But in her senior year, the drive became all-consuming. Diggins found herself in what she called a slow spiral.
I think I felt a lot of shame and guilt and denial about the eating disorder that I had.
I find it so interesting because I think there is this idea out there that athletes are immune to eating disorders because you need to fuel your body in order to perform. Mm-hmm. That's not true.
No, no one's immune to them. And it's something that I think we all struggle with.
Her family was there for her, and Mom Deb heard about the Emily program, where she received intensive therapy and treatment.
I needed to learn how to love myself again.
And she's become a dedicated ambassador for the program.
I think when I was younger, I would maybe listen to my body and then choose to ignore it. And now that I'm getting a little older and maybe a little wiser, I try to listen to my body and then act on what it's telling me and have the guts to do less. It was a long, painful process, but I think I'm getting there.
Sounds like you learned a big lesson from it, though.
I did. I learned a lot about how to absorb stress and pressure and use very healthy tools. Maybe it's video calling with my fiance and talking about the day. Maybe it's taking the dog for a walk. Maybe it's playing games with my teammates. You have to be able to be really snappy and fast.
Diggins is still driven, still one of the hardest workers in one of the most brutal sports.
So you're gonna come up, curl into a ball.
Oh, okay.
This is just a hold.
As I quite painfully learned. Heading to China, Diggins is not sneaking up on anyone. This Olympic and World Cup champ has the target squarely on her back. And yes, she's still applying her glitter like war paint.
Will I go fight as hard as I can for my team and my country?
But at these games, she will not necessarily define herself by the hardware.
Then I can walk away and feel proud no matter what the result is. Because I think it's so important to not tie your worth to medals.
Glitter has always been a big deal to Jessie Diggins. She brought 6 containers of it to Beijing, and we thought, you know what? That sounds like fun. And that's her whole point, is to have fun at these games and not worry about medaling. Jamie Yuka, CBS News, Beijing.
Today at the Winter Olympics, Shaun White kicks off the final competition of his Olympics career. Chloe Kim launches her gold medal defense in the halfpipe, and Michaela Schifrin goes for gold in the slalom. Today's action gets started at 3 p.m. on KHNL. You won't want to miss it. Where's our glitter? Thanks, Jamie. All right, let's move on. Let's talk some more about the Super Bowl. And what is the greatest Super Bowl ad of all time? It really is the eternal question. Tonight, there's a special on CBS. Boomer Esiason tries to help answer that question.
There have been 55 years of Super Bowls, 55 years of commercials. We've been going through it. We've been arguing about it. Now we need the fans out there to make the ultimate decision before us.
Look, I'm going to level with you guys. We're out of Bud Light. And they have some!
And they have some. Viewers will decide the winners on this CBS special, Super Bowl Greatest Commercials, All-Time Classics. It airs at 7 p.m. on KHNL. You'll also get a sneak peek at some of those upcoming ads as well. This one's classic.
Betty.
Everyone loves the Betty White one. And get this, guess how much a Super Bowl ad is going for right now?
Oh, several millions.
Yeah, 6.5 million.
Yep.
Back in the first Super Bowl in 1967, I believe, it was around 40,000.
So is that for like 15 seconds?
30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds.
30 seconds for 6.5 mil.
Yeah, that's
bargain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So you guys, the 2022 Oscar nominations are out, and I love when this happens because this list kind of tells you what you should be watching. So Netflix's The Power of the Dog is leading the pack with 12 nods, the most of any film. It's described as a Western psychological drama. Sounds really good. I haven't seen it yet. And it's followed closely behind by Dune, a sprawling adaptation of a popular sci-fi novel that was once believed to be unfilmable. So that got 10 Oscar nominations. West Side Story, Steven Spielberg's ravishing take on a beloved musical, and Belfast, a semi-autobiographical coming-of-age story, each received 7 nods. All 4 of those films up for Best Picture.
I haven't seen many of them.
Yeah, me too.
And you know what's not on there? House of Gucci. Which
I
I think a lot of people thought was going to get some, but didn't happen.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep talking filmmakers, and Jim Mendoza introduces us to a fascinating one in today's Good News Now.
Take the ball and you walk away. Cut the shot there.
Native Hawaiian filmmaker Aaron Lau tells stories through a script, camera, and on-screen talent. But the heartbeat of her projects is her love for Hawaii.
The more stories we can get out about us, the more we can kind of fill in that bigger picture and all these little shades of who we are as Hawaiians and the Hawaii community.
Netflix, Tribeca Studios, and Gold House selected her as one of 3 indigenous filmmakers for a new director's program. The Future Gold Film Fellowship aims to further the work of Asian and Pacific Island filmmakers.
They are funding and giving mentorship and creative feedback on all 3 projects, and they'll all be shot by and finished by end of May with the aim of premiering it at the Tribeca Film Festival. And then we see where they go from there.
Lau's film will be about a struggling photographer who's shooting the Big Island's lava flow and dealing with deep-rooted family problems.
I grew up in Kahaluu, Hawaii, and all of my work now is dedicated to stories about our community.
It's a thread seen in her other works, like the acclaimed The Moon and the Night, that focuses on the joy, struggles, and hardships faced by local families.
We have to be willing to confront a lot of the not such beautiful things too, and start to ask why. Why are we here? Why are our families in this shape? And I think that's when we can kind of detangle ourselves with these traumatic things going on in our home.
Lau now freelances in Los Angeles, but spends a lot of time back home. She's working on a movie with other Native Hawaiians for the Hawaii International Film Festival and co-producing a documentary about Mauna Kea and the Native Hawaiian movement.
I think at the end of the day, I just want to make honest work that serves our community well and asks us to think deeply about things. And whatever shape that takes, I'm open to.
Aaron Lau is someone to watch. Someday there may be a feature film with her name on it. Jim Mendoza, Hawaii News Now.
Awesome accomplishments.
Yeah,
there.
what an opportunity.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now. Don't forget KHNL coverage of fresh Olympic coverage comes